The art of detachment. Live freely without fear. The hidden prison. Why we suffer from attachment. What if the very things you hold on to are the reason you feel trapped? Take a moment and think about that. Most people believe that holding on tightly to relationships, to success, to security is what keeps them safe. We're taught that if we care deeply enough, work hard enough, and control every detail, we can protect what matters most. But what if the opposite is true? What if the tighter you grip, the more fragile everything becomes? This is the hidden prison of attachment, and most people are living inside it without even realizing it. In today's world, attachment doesn't just exist, it thrives. We live in a culture that constantly reinforces the idea that our worth is tied to what we have and who we are connected to. Your job title, your income, your social status, your relationships, all of these become part of your identity. And once they become part of your identity, losing them doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels like losing yourself. Think about how often people say things like, "I can't lose this job. I can't live without this person. I need this to work out." At first, these statements sound normal, even reasonable. But beneath them lies something deeper. Fear. Fear of loss. Fear of change. Fear of not being enough. And that fear is where suffering begins. Attachment, at its core, is not the same as love, passion, or ambition. It's something much more subtle and much more dangerous. Attachment is the emotional dependence on outcomes, people, or identities to make us feel whole. It's the belief that I need this to be okay. But life doesn't work that way. Life is unpredictable. People change. Circumstances shift, plans fall apart, but no matter how carefully you try to control things, uncertainty is always there, waiting quietly in the background. And yet, we resist this truth. We try to control everything. How people feel about us, how situations unfold, how the future turns out. We hold on tightly, believing that if we just try a little harder, we can prevent loss, avoid pain, and secure happiness. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control life, the more anxious you become. Because deep down, you already know the truth. You can't control everything. This creates a constant inner tension. You're always on edge, always worried, always trying to protect something that was never fully yours to begin with. And instead of feeling safe, you feel exhausted. This is the cost of attachment. It shows up as anxiety when things don't go as planned. It shows up as jealousy when you fear losing someone. It shows up as stress when your identity is tied to success, and it shows up as heartbreak when something you depended on disappears. Attachment makes your emotional state dependent on external conditions. And external conditions are always changing. So what happens? You ride an emotional roller coaster. When things go your way, you feel high. When they don't, you crash. Your peace becomes temporary, fragile, unstable, and constantly under threat. Let's make this more real. Imagine someone who is deeply attached to a relationship. At first, everything feels perfect. They feel loved, valued, secure. But slowly, attachment begins to creep in. They start needing constant reassurance. They worry about losing the other person. They overanalyze every message, every silence, every small change in behavior. What started as love turns into anxiety. Now, their happiness depends entirely on the other person's actions. If they get attention, they feel okay. If they don't, they feel anxious or hurt. They're no longer free. They're emotionally dependent. And here's the painful truth. The more attached they become, the more pressure they put on the relationship. And that pressure often leads to the very outcome they fear most: distance, conflict, or even loss. This pattern doesn't just apply to relationships. It happens in careers, too. Someone becomes attached to success, to recognition, to a specific outcome. They believe, if I achieve this, then I'll finally feel fulfilled. So they pour everything into it. But along the way, they lose their peace. They become stressed, impatient, and afraid of failure. Every setback feels like a personal attack. Every delay feels unbearable. And even when they succeed, the satisfaction is short-lived because there's something else to chase, something else to hold on to. This is how attachment traps you. It convinces you that your happiness exists somewhere outside of you, in a person, a result, or a future moment. And it keeps you chasing, holding, fearing, and clinging. But no matter how hard you try, you can never fully relax. Because deep down, you know it could all change. And that's the hidden truth most people avoid. You don't suffer because you care too much. You suffer because you're afraid to let go. There's a difference. Caring is natural. It's human. It's what allows you to love, to connect, to experience life deeply. But attachment goes beyond caring. It turns connection into dependence. It turns desire into fear. And fear is what keeps you stuck. So the question becomes, if attachment is the root of so much anxiety, stress, and emotional pain, what does it actually mean to let go? Does it mean giving up on your goals? Walking away from relationships? Becoming cold and distant? Or is there another way to live? One where you can care deeply, pursue your dreams, and love fully, without being controlled by fear. That's what we're going to explore next. But before we do, take a moment to reflect on your own life. What are you holding on to right now? What are you afraid of losing? And how much of your peace depends on it? If this message resonates with you, and you're ready to break free from the emotional weight that's been holding you back, make sure to subscribe to Buddha Flash. Because learning how to let go might be the most important skill you ever develop. The art of letting go. What detachment really means. If attachment is the hidden source of so much anxiety, stress, and emotional pain, then the natural question becomes, what does it actually mean to let go? For many people, the idea of detachment feels uncomfortable, even threatening. It sounds like giving up, like becoming distant, cold, or emotionally numb. Some fear that if they stop holding on so tightly, they'll lose everything that matters. But that's not what detachment is. Detachment is not about withdrawing from life, and it's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't care. In fact, true detachment allows you to care more deeply, not less. Detachment means you are fully engaged in life, but not controlled by it. It means you can love someone without needing them to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. It means you can pursue success without tying your self-worth to the outcome. It means you can experience joy without fearing its loss every second. In simple terms, detachment is the ability to care without clinging. And that changes everything. Because when you stop clinging, fear begins to loosen its grip on you. Think about it this way. Most of your emotional pain doesn't come from what happens. It comes from your resistance to what happens. It comes from the gap between how you think life should be and how it actually is. Detachment closes that gap. It doesn't mean you stop having preferences or goals. It means you stop demanding that life unfold exactly the way you want in order for you to feel at peace. And this shift starts with one powerful realization. You can participate in life fully without trying to control it. That's the foundation of detachment. And to live this way, you need to make a few important mental shifts. The first shift is moving from control to acceptance. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything. Situations, outcomes, even other people's emotions. But control is limited. You can control your actions, your effort, your attitude, but you cannot control results, timing, or how others behave. Detachment begins when you accept this. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It simply means you stop fighting reality. You stop arguing with what already is. Instead of saying, "This shouldn't be happening," you begin to say, "This is happening. Now, how do I respond?" That small shift brings enormous relief, because resistance creates tension. Acceptance creates space. The second shift is moving from possession to appreciation. And attachment makes you feel like you own things. Your relationship, your success, your status. And when you feel like you own something, you naturally become afraid of losing it. But the truth is, nothing in life is permanent. People change. Circumstances evolve. Time moves forward, no matter what you do. Detachment doesn't deny this reality. It embraces it. Instead of trying to possess things, you learn to appreciate them while they're here. You enjoy the relationship without trying to control it. You value your achievements without letting them define you. You experience moments fully, knowing they won't last forever. And strangely, this makes life more meaningful, not less. Because when you stop taking things for granted, you start truly experiencing them. The third shift is moving from fear to trust. At the core of attachment is fear. The fear that if things don't go your way, you won't be okay. That you'll lose something essential. That you won't be able to handle what comes next. Detachment replaces that fear with trust. Not blind optimism, not the belief that everything will always go perfectly, but a deeper trust in yourself that no matter what happens, you will adapt, learn, and continue. This kind of trust is powerful, because when you trust yourself, you no longer need to control everything. You no longer panic when things change. You become more flexible, more resilient, more grounded. You stop asking, "What if I lose this?" and start realizing, even if I do, I'll be okay. Let's bring this into real life. Imagine you're in a relationship. With attachment, your happiness depends on constant validation. You need reassurance, attention, certainty. Any small change in the other person's behavior triggers anxiety. But with detachment, something shifts. You still love, you still care, but you no longer need the relationship to define your worth. And you don't try to control the other person. You allow space for them and for yourself. And because of that, the relationship becomes healthier, lighter, more genuine. Or think about your career. With attachment, you obsess over results. You tie your identity to success. Failure feels devastating because it threatens your sense of self. But with detachment, you focus on the process. You give your best effort. You stay committed. But you don't let the outcome dictate your emotional state. Whether you succeed or fail, you remain grounded. And ironically, this often leads to better performance because you're no longer paralyzed by fear. Even with money, the same principle applies. Attachment creates constant worry about losing it, not having enough, comparing yourself to others. Detachment allows you to use money as a tool, not as a measure of your worth. You manage it wisely, but you don't let it control your peace. So how do you actually begin practicing detachment? It starts with awareness. Pay attention to your thoughts and emotions. Notice when you feel anxious, tense, or overly reactive. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing right now? That question alone can reveal your attachments. Then, gently challenge those thoughts. Is your peace really dependent on this one outcome? Is your identity truly defined by this one thing? What would happen if you loosened your grip just a little? You don't need to let go of everything at once. Start small. Let go of the need to control a conversation. Let go of the need to be right. Let go of minor expectations that create unnecessary stress. Over time, these small moments build a new way of being, a lighter way, a freer way. Because detachment isn't something you achieve overnight. It's something you practice again and again in everyday life. And the more you practice it, the more you begin to feel a quiet shift within yourself. Less tension, less fear, less dependence, more clarity, more peace, more freedom. But this raises one final question. What does life actually look like when you fully embrace detachment? What changes, not just in your mind, but in your everyday experience? That's what we're going to explore next. Living freely. How detachment transforms your life. What happens when you finally stop clinging? Not just in theory, but in real life, in everyday moments, in the quiet spaces where your thoughts used to race and your emotions used to swing back and forth. Something subtle begins to change. At first, it's almost unnoticeable. You react a little less. You worry a little less. Situations that once triggered anxiety no longer have the same grip on you. And over time, that subtle shift becomes something powerful. You begin to feel free. Not because your life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you are no longer controlled by the need for it to be. This is the true result of detachment. Inner peace that doesn't depend on external conditions. When you let go of attachment, How'd you stop riding the emotional roller coaster of things going your way versus things falling apart? Your peace becomes more stable, more grounded, less fragile. You still experience life fully. You still feel joy, excitement, love. But those emotions are no longer tied to fear. You don't constantly worry about losing what you have because you've made peace with the fact that everything in life is temporary. And instead of making life feel empty, this realization makes it feel more meaningful. Because now, you're actually present. Think about how often attachment pulls you out of the present moment. When things are going well, you worry about how long it will last. When things are uncertain, you try to predict and control the future. When something goes wrong, you replay it over and over in your mind. Attachment keeps you stuck in what if and what should have been. Detachment brings you back to what is. And there is a quiet power in that, when you're no longer mentally trapped in the past or future. You begin to experience life more directly. Conversations feel more genuine. Moments feel more vivid. Even simple things like a walk, a breath, a quiet morning carry a sense of peace that used to feel out of reach. This is what it means to live freely. Let's make this real. Imagine losing a job. For someone deeply attached, this can feel like a collapse of identity. Thoughts like, I've failed, I'm not good enough, or my future is ruined, start to take over. Anxiety builds. Fear of judgment appears. The emotional impact becomes overwhelming. But for someone practicing detachment, the experience is different. It's still difficult. It still matters. But it doesn't define them. They see it for what it is. A change in circumstance, not a reflection of their worth. Instead of collapsing, they adapt. They reflect, learn, and move forward. The situation is the same, but the internal experience is completely different. And now think about relationships. A breakup, for example, is one of the most painful experiences people go through. And attachment often intensifies that pain. It turns loss into identity crisis. It creates thoughts like, I can't live without them, or I'll never be okay again. But with detachment, something shifts. You still feel the pain. You still grieve, but you don't lose yourself in it. You understand that the relationship was a part of your life, not the foundation of your existence. You allow yourself to feel, but you don't cling to what's no longer there. You let the experience shape you, not break you. And eventually, you move forward, not with bitterness, but with growth. This is emotional resilience. Detachment doesn't remove pain from life. it changes your relationship with it. Instead of resisting pain, you allow it. Instead of fearing change, you adapt to it. Instead of clinging to what was, you open yourself to what can be. And in doing so, you suffer less. And there's also a powerful paradox at the heart of detachment. When you stop clinging to life, you actually begin to experience it more deeply, because attachment creates tension. It makes you hold back, hesitate, and overthink. It fills your mind with fear and expectation. Detachment removes that tension. You become more open, more relaxed, more present. You laugh more freely because you're not worried about how things will end. You love more deeply because you're not trying to control the outcome. You take action more confidently because you're not paralyzed by fear of failure. In other words, you live more fully. So how do you bring this into your daily life? It's not about making one big decision to let go of everything. It's about small, consistent practices that gradually shift your mindset. Start with this. Let go of outcomes. When you work toward something, a goal, a project, a conversation, focus on your effort, not the result. Give your best, but release the need for a specific outcome. Notice how that changes your experience. Next, pause before reacting. When something triggers you, anger, fear, frustration, take a moment. Ask yourself, am I reacting because I'm trying to control something I can't? That pause creates space. And in that space, you have a choice. You can react, or you can respond. Another powerful practice is focusing on the present moment, not as a concept, but as a habit. Pay attention to what's in front of you, the conversation you're having, the task you're doing, the breath you're taking. The more you anchor yourself in the present, the less power attachment has over you. Because attachment lives in the past and future, not in the now. And finally, remind yourself of this truth. You were never meant to control life, only to experience it. That single idea can shift everything. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to guarantee outcomes. You don't need to hold on so tightly. Life is not something you conquer. It's something you move through. And when you move through it with openness instead of resistance, with trust instead of fear, with detachment instead of clinging, you begin to feel something most people are searching for, but rarely find. Freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, not freedom from challenges, but freedom from the constant fear of losing, failing, or not being enough. And that kind of freedom changes how you live, how you think, and how you experience every moment. So as you move forward from here, ask yourself honestly, what is one thing in your life you know you need to let go of, but haven't yet? If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to Buddha Flash for more insights on living a peaceful, fearless, and truly free life. Because sometimes the key to finding everything you're looking for is learning how to let go.